Hi, everyone. Anyone logging on at the moment? We're going to get underway in just a minute, so bear with us. We'll be starting in just a minute, just waiting for a few people to log on. Okay, guys, I think we're going to get started now. Thank you so much for joining us. It's good to see everyone jumping online, and we really appreciate you giving up so much of your time or your evening to spend it with us. My name is Kate Creedon. I'm a journalist here in Australia and also the host of the Nursing Down Under podcast, which is presented by Alliance Nursing. Now, I assume most of you are jumping online because you are thinking about coming to live in Australia in 2024. Well, you are in the right place. If you weren't able to get along to the Say G'day events in Liverpool and Dublin, this is really an opportunity to hear from nurses like you who have recently moved out, and also to hear from the Alliance Nursing team to answer any questions you might have about living and working down under. We have Alliance Nursing's National Manager of Corporate Health and International Supply Chain, Kate Gormley, with us, as well as Jane Cunningham, Alliance's International Recruitment Manager, who some of you may have already been in touch with, as well as Joanne Summers, Alliance Recruitment Consultant in the UK. We're going to hear from them a little bit later, along with Eva Frawley, who is Alliance Nursing's International Candidate Care Manager, and probably the first person you'll have contact with when you arrive here in Australia. We're going to hear from them shortly, as I mentioned, but first we'd love to know a little bit more about you. So if possible, please send us a message in the chat feature to let us know if you're a student, if you're looking for a working holiday in Australia, or perhaps you want permanent work. That's really going to help us tailor what we cover today. And if you have any questions along the way too, make sure you pop them in that message Q&A box or in the chat box there, and we'll get those answered for you. But first, I'd like to introduce three Alliance nurses. First, we have Brogan Backhouse. Brogan is from Bournemouth in the UK and moved over in September. Her partner has also just arrived. She's currently living in Brisbane and working in mental health. Hello, Brogan.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. I'd also like to introduce Aveen Duggan. Aveen is an RN3 general and paediatric nurse from Clare who moved to Melbourne with a group of friends in October. Hi, Aveen.
Hello. Morning or evening.
We also have Amy O'Riordan with us. Amy moved from County Cork in 2018. She's actually joining us from Ireland today, but she's about to make Melbourne her home once again after being nominated for permanent residency. And Amy was also a guest in the first season, in 2 episodes, I should say, of the first season of Nursing Down Under. Amy, it's lovely to see you again.
Hi, so good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great that you guys could join us because you all have such different experiences. Brogan, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a bit about yourself and how you ended up in Australia.
Well, I started off in Australia 5 years ago, as most people would do, backpacking. So I wasn't even a nurse at that point in time. I just did a lot of traveling. Recent split with an old partner, moved out here, did a lot of traveling, started in Sydney, Melbourne, moved up the coast, decided it was somewhere that I wanted to stay, and then went home, did my nursing, and now I'm back out.
And, you know, you obviously went back and became a nurse. You know, is that because you loved Australia so much?
Yeah, I was well, it's a funny story that my mum likes to tell at Christmas, where I rang her up from a banana farm and told her, oh, I'm going to come back and do university. And she thought I was just a little bit drunk until I rang her the next day and said, oh, I am actually going to come back and be a nurse. And then I moved back home. And then did all of my nursing through COVID and then moved back out.
So did you go through the process of getting your APRA registration before you moved out? And tell us, what was that process like?
I kind of like lone wolf my AFRA process, which was really kind of difficult. And then once Alliance kind of got involved, it becomes so much easier. So I think at the time I wanted to move out and I didn't really know what avenue I didn't really know where to look. So I started the AFRA process myself. And as people might know, it's quite a tricky process. You've got to sign all these documents, and it's it was really quite confusing. But then once kind of Alliance got involved, it kind of made it more linear and streamlined for me, and they kind of told me what I needed and what I didn't need, and then I was all set.
And you moved out with your partner. He's just joined you. How's he finding it there in Brisbane?
Um, Hot. He's used to English weather. He's lived in England for most of his life, whereas I've traveled quite extensively across Australia, and now it's Christmas. It's moving into the high 30s, so he's spending currently most of the time inside in aircon. So, but he's really enjoying the transition from English life to Australian life.
Yeah, it would be quite a transition coming from English winter straight into full-on Brisbane humid summer. That's you couldn't get more extreme, really.
Yeah, well, his decision to move out in November, I did warn him, and now he's kind of taken my warning on board and said that it was probably the worst time for him to move out to acclimatise.
He'll catch up. All right, Aideen, what about you? Tell us about yourself and what made you want to move to Australia.
Perfect. So I'm 25, I'm from Clare, and I did general and pediatric nursing together in Ireland. And I trained in Cork and I lived in Cork for a few years, and then I moved to Dublin and I just did 2 years in Dublin. And a lot of Irish nurses would go out to Australia or to London. It's seen as places of like really good training, good lifestyle, and obviously the weather is different in Australia. So I was very intrigued about living somewhere where it's sunny a lot of the time. So I moved out there in October, and it was just the right time to go. I think I'd lived in Dublin and Cork, and I'd been working for 2.5 years, and it just felt like the right time to come out here. And I was lucky that a group of my friends were coming out as well. So we all came out together. So it made it feel more like a holiday at the start rather than like a big, scary move across the world kind of a thing.
So if you're all coming out together, I mean, what was the process like moving out? Was there much that you had to organise?
I actually came out with 5 teachers, which I only lived with nurses beforehand, so it was different. But no, like I felt like in Ireland, a lot of the stuff you could do at home, which was handy. A lot of the APRA stuff I could do at home. And then once I got linked in with like Aoife and Jane and Alliance, once I came over, APRA was kind of handled, like Brogan said, completely for me. I didn't really need to do very much, which was handy because when you move out, like you're stressed about where you're going to live and things like that. So it was nice to kind of pass the APRA bits off to someone else. And then whenever I was kind of ready to work, Alliance were ready for me then. So I didn't feel any pressure to start working straight away or to get things sorted straight away. I felt like they were very good that way to give me my own time. And then when I came over, I think I only had to do small things. Like I had to get a flu vaccine and I could walk into a farm.
Oops, there you are. We lost you for a second. Can you hear me there?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, good. No, all good. So you're living in Melbourne now. How are you finding it?
I love it. Yeah, I love Melbourne. I'm living in South Yarra. It's really nice. It's really close. Like there's a train station just 10-minute walk away. I have a bus stop outside my house and I have a tram. So it's very handy for going to different hospitals and things like that. So yeah, I find it really good. Lots of coffee shops and always something to do. So very nice. I like South Yarra.
And moving out with that big group, has that helped as well? You've got a bit of
a definitely. Definitely it was different. And there's always someone around, which is nice when you do shift work. There's always someone here. I'm surprised they're actually being so quiet now that you can't hear them because there is 7 of us in the one house. But
early in the morning.
Yeah, they must be asleep maybe. But I did have friends who moved out, like just themselves and their partners and themselves and their friends, and they have the same experience as well. So I don't think you have to come with a big group, but worked out perfect for me that I did.
Amy, you're back home in Ireland at the moment. Catch us up. What's been happening in your life?
So we came back to Ireland from Australia in June 2022. We'd been there for 2.5 years all during COVID and stuff like that. So we felt like it was kind of time to come home. Hadn't seen our families in nearly 3 years. So we came home in June 2022, spent some time with family, did a little bit of traveling. And then by I think it was probably February or March of this year, we kind of knew we're probably going to head back to Australia, which my mom had called from the minute I came home. She said, "You'll go back there." And we were like, "No, no, no, we won't." But here we are.
Well, tell me a little bit about, I know you were involved in some of those Say G'day events.
Mhm.
What was that like?
It was really good. And I think it made me even more excited to go back to Australia, seeing all these new nurses come through the doors, really eager, asking lots of questions. And I guess being able to tell them about your experience and, talk to them one to one, having been through that whole experience before, I found it was really exciting for them and it was really exciting for me because you're helping people kind of come through again and, help them through the process that it was only me a couple of years ago, which is really nice.
And talk me through, how you ended up getting that permanent residency. Because I guess that's a huge thing. When you
Yeah.
make that life
So
change, you come back. Yeah.
I had with Alliance from when I moved to Australia in 2018. I had first linked up with Jane before I came to Australia, and she helped me with all the paperwork on the Irish side. And then as soon as I came to Oz, I went to Sydney first and met Aoife. And I had done all that and then worked with Alliance for 3.5 years. And then in February of 2021, I got a shift in the Royal Melbourne Hospital in the psychiatric ward. And that shift led to me being offered a permanent position. And I worked there for 1.5 years before I came home. So when we were looking at going back to Australia, we got in touch with the hospital again and they nominated us for permanent residency. So after that, it was quite simple, I suppose, the process. It was a lot of work, but it was kind of, you've help from both sides as well. But yeah, that's how I ended up getting it. So it was kind of through the agency and then, they opened the doors for more opportunities, which was really good.
So even working as an agency nurse can sort of lead you to finding full-time work within a hospital further down the track.
The time. And I think, agency suits so many people. I love working agency because you've the freedom of choosing your hours and things like that. But then sometimes people want to take on a full-time job for a while as well, and that's fine. And I think the agency helped me to make that transition.
All right, Brogan, let's come back to you. So what was it about Brisbane? So we've heard from the others who've sort of been around Melbourne. What was it about Brisbane that really drew you in?
I think because I traveled Australia quite extensively 5 years ago, I did Sydney. I did what every Brit seems to do, is go straight to Sydney and explore all of Sydney. And I did a little bit of Melbourne as well. I lived out in St Kilda for a little while. And then I did what most or some backpackers do and got a van and traveled up the coast, the Gold Coast, the Sunshine Coast, and then up to Cairns. And when I was traveling around Brisbane, I was like, this is so chill. So I think Brisbane for me was like all the nice parts of Sydney and Melbourne, but kind of like a little bit more laid back. We've got the two coasts either side, so I'm only an hour away from the Gold Coast, and then I'm only an hour and a half away from Noosa if we want to go surfing and stuff. So for us and our lifestyle, it was perfect.
And your partner, he's managed to find work as well?
Yeah, so he is a registered biomedical scientist in the UK. However, him being a bit loose goosey about what he wanted to do, he's just found tradie work for now, but he's looking at getting re-registered with the biomedical stuff out here. But it's like AFRA, so it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of money, and then once he's got his foot in the door, he'll be absolutely fine.
And tell me a bit about your experience. So where have you been working since you landed in Brisbane?
I've been working in all areas. In the UK, I specialise in working in a very kind of in a male PQ in mental health. Whereas over here, I've been working with drug and alcohol. I've been working in, they're called high dependency units over here. So working in HDUs, been working in acutes. So I've been doing a little bit of everything, and it's kind of nice, a little bit refreshing, takes me back to being a student nurse again, where I never know what I'm going to walk into. But yeah, it's been really nice because then it's kind of leading me into kind of areas that I know that I specifically want to be in, or areas that I'm like, I can pass that. I can maybe find a different area that I want to be in.
And have you been getting enough shifts? Like, are you finding that the work's consistent?
Yeah. So when I first started, I think when you first start, it is quite daunting, and you're like, oh, am I going to get enough shifts? Is it going to be like the UK? But I've been getting loads of shifts. I've recently just come off the back of nights. But they have a wide variety of shifts of morning. I've been getting loads of mornings recently, loads of afternoons. Obviously, there's heaps of night shifts. So I've been working like 4 or 5 days. A lot of people don't need to work that because a lot of people just want to work 2 to 3 days, and that's absolutely fine. But we're doing a lot of saving. We want to save money to go out and travel and stuff. So I'm able to work 5 days a week if I want to.
That sounds amazing. Aveen, what sort of work have you been getting since you've been in Melbourne?
So I'm general and pediatric qualified, so it was very handy for me when I came out first because there is loads of peds work in Melbourne, but it's a little competitive. A few of my friends came over after me, and like we'd be like fighting each other for shifts and things. So I was very lucky that I could work in general as well. So I actually started off in general shifts when I came out here in some private hospitals, and then I've been working pediatrics since. And if I find that maybe the peds wards are a little bit quiet, especially coming up to Christmas, then I can go back to general again. So it's kind of handy for when it's coming to Christmas time and you'd like to have a little bit of money for social things and your first Australian Christmas, that I have that backup plan if I'm not getting a lot of pediatric shifts and stuff. So I find that really handy with agency. And like Brogan said as well, picking my hours is so different to home. Like I'm still getting used to it. But the freedom that's there and like the self-drive that's there then to work, I kind of enjoy it.
So it's kind of good to have that dual specialities, so to speak, because you can sort of pick and choose, depending what availability there is on shifts.
Yeah, definitely. It does make you really flexible. And I find like if Alliance ring me and maybe there isn't any peds shifts for the day, or maybe not till the following day, they will always offer me general work as well. So it's very handy that I might necessarily work in one specialty one day, but the next day. So it's kind of nice to keep my skills going in both settings as well, which is nice.
And what hospitals? Like, it's mostly hospitals you're working in?
Yeah, it's all hospitals I've been in. So I've been to like hospitals in Richmond. It's all private hospitals at the moment I've been in, which is interesting because I've never worked in a private hospital before. So it's nice to see that side and see how different hospitals work and different medical teams and different systems and stuff like that. So it's been nice to kind of get out of my comfort zone a bit while I'm here as well. So that if I did come home, I wouldn't be totally scared of working in a private hospital and things like that.
Is the private system very different here to back home?
Yeah, a little. Yeah, there is. I'd be going into everything. They have like a point of care system, so you scan your thumb onto this computer, and like the patients can order food off the computer, and like you'd be doing rounding and stuff. And it took me a few days to get used to it, but it's very cool. So yeah, I would find it different. Seems to be a little bit more tech savvy and stuff over here, which is nice to see as well because I wouldn't have been used to that.
And you also mentioned earlier that you're really close to the train station. You're in a really central location there. So does that mean you don't need a car, or do you still think it's beneficial to have a car if you were?
For where I am, and I definitely don't need a car, to be honest. And like, there's been no hospital that I couldn't get to by the train or by the bus at the moment. I'm kind of working in Richmond and in East Melbourne and Fitzroy, and there's a bus just outside my house. So like, if you look up the travel time on Google Maps, it includes like the walk from my door, which is really handy. Especially if you're working nights and things like that. But like my friends live in other suburbs and they don't really have any issue either. And if there is somewhere that is a bit further out, Alliance will like discuss that with you beforehand and kind of let you know how far it is and things like that. So that's helpful too, because I wouldn't super know my way around yet. So it's nice to have that as well.
Amy, you've obviously spent a bit of time between Australia and, back home in Ireland as well. What would you say is the biggest difference between nursing in Australia and back home?
I suppose, first of all, the hours are so different. When I moved back here, I found it so hard to get back into the 12-hour shifts, whereas in Australia, you mostly have 8-hour shifts, whether it's, the 7 to 3, 1 to 9, and the night shift being maybe about 10 hours. So I found the 12-hour shifts really hard to get back into. I know you're working less days in the week, but I think the Australian hours suit me a lot better. And then the patient load as well. So you've much higher patient load, I found, at home than in Australia. And even talking to some nurses here that are working in the hospitals, when you tell them what your patient load might be in Australia, they're so shocked. Like, they cannot believe that you would be capped at maybe 8 patients in a private hospital, because that would be probably the minimal you'd get here.
Yeah, right.
They'd be
So, yeah, and I guess you know, when you're starting out or you do first move over, I mean, are you getting the shifts that you want?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say to every agency nurse going over is be open-minded at first, because I think a lot of people come over, they expect to get shifts. Say you're used to working in A&E, they expect to get all A&E shifts straight away. That's what's going to be offered to them. And that's not always the case. I think you need to get yourself familiar with the allocation stuff. You need to, obviously say what shifts that you would like, but also take the shifts that you're being offered as well at the start. I took shifts at the start in aged care facilities, which wasn't my usual shift work that I would be, kind of wanting. And I found nearly in those shifts I learned the most. And then after a few weeks, I started getting the shifts that really suited me and that I really wanted. So I would say go with an open mind and take whatever shifts are given at the start and just be open-minded to that. And then you will, in a few weeks, a month's time, get the shifts that you do really want and in the places that you want to go.
And what about outside of work? I mean, how do you go about meeting new people?
I suppose there's so many ways. First of all, Alliance do nurse meetups, which I found great. And, when they did those meetups, a lot of the times it was like with nurses that had all come over in a similar time frame, which I found was really good, because we were all going through the same thing. And, you can discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, and be really honest about it, which I found really refreshing. And then, I mean, there's so much goes on. You can obviously the usual things, you can meet people in the pub and stuff like that, but there's GAA clubs, there's loads of like cricket teams, AFL teams, there's sunrise socials, things like this. So there's just so much opportunities to meet new people and make friends. You'll never be short of that anyway.
And Aideen, what are your plans? How long do you think you'll stay for?
So I'm definitely staying the year. I haven't flown home yet anyways, which is good. But no, I'm hoping a year to 2 years. I really like Melbourne. I really like it here. I'm starting to settle a little bit, and I have, like my friends with me that are here, and I'm starting slowly to make friends, like Amy said, around the place. So yeah, hopefully a year, but hopefully 2 years. We'll see how we go.
And what about you, Brogan? Think you'll stay in Brisbane?
I think that will probably be dependent on whether my boyfriend can handle the heat. He's looking a lot towards South Australia, and he's also ginger, so who can blame him? But I would like to stay in Brisbane in the tropics, and also, if you didn't know, Queensland nurses get paid the most. So if you're looking for PR roles, it's definitely a good place to be. But we are looking for long-term residency. I've spoken with Aoife up here in the Brisbane team about potentially going on a TSS visa before moving on to a PR. But yeah, we're going to play the long game, I think.
Yeah, so good to hear. And Amy, any advice for those thinking of moving out, or anything perhaps you would have done differently?
I would say just go for it. First of all, I think when you are thinking about moving out, and even this time, even though we spent 4.5 years living in Australia, I think leaving is always the hard part, and there's a lot of what ifs, and what if this happens, and what if this happens. And the one thing I found from being in Australia and just going for it was things are always going to happen, and life's going to move on whether you're at home or not. So if you're considering going and you're kind of humming and hawing, just go for it. The worst thing that it can happen is that you don't like it and you go home. So I always think going and trying it, you'll be thankful either way, whether you stay for a couple of months or you stay for a couple of years, like we ended up doing. Everyone said, when I went, my parents were upset. They said, don't worry, she'll be back after a few months. And I was still there 4.5 years later. So you never know. So I would just say, if you're thinking about it, go for it. Worst that can happen is you'll come home.
Yeah, good advice. All right, guys, thank you so much. And just a reminder for those that have logged on, if you have any questions for our nurses, just pop them in the Q&A feature or in the chat feature there, and we'll get those answered for you. Let's hear from the Alliance Nursing team now. Many of you might already know Jane Cunningham. Jane is Alliance Nursing's International Recruitment Manager. Jane, welcome.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
Really well. Great to see you. Now, for those who missed out, tell us a bit about the Say G'day events that you hosted in Liverpool and Dublin.
Yeah, they were a great success. So Kate Gormley was over from Australia. Amy attended both, and Joanne, who's also on, was at the Liverpool event with us as well. They were both really successful events. We met lots of nurses. The Dublin event was a drop-in day. So we had a lot of nurses drop in, have lunch with us, have a chat, give us an idea of their plans, have some drinks towards the end of the day. So we really got to sit around and, chat to people, get to the nitty gritty of what were they looking for, what was motivating them to move to Australia, being able to give them advice based on that and what areas would suit them the best. Which was great having Kate over from Australia, because obviously she was able to pinpoint different aspects of, what state would suit certain nurses, and also based on their experience as well. The Liverpool event was busier than we ever could have imagined. It's the busiest event we ever did. It was absolutely fantastic. We had approximately 200 nurses on the day. Myself and Kate ran presentations throughout the day. I think we did the presentation maybe 4 times throughout the day. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to make the event as informative as possible. So we had different stands at the event. We had a stand for people looking for permanent positions, a stand for people looking at working holiday visas, and we had people manning the stands that could answer all of their questions. And then obviously myself and Kate floated around and chatted to everybody throughout the day as well. We had our partners there. So we had PSS, who are a removals company. We had the Down Under Centre, who are visa experts. They're migration agents. So they're our go-to for, any visa questions that we would have. And then we had Bupa there as well, who were obviously private health insurance for people moving over to Australia. So yeah, it was a very busy day. I think by the end of it, myself and Kate were sick of the sound of our own voices. We literally talked all day long, but it was
And
really, really good.
so any plans where you headed next?
So I'm actually going back to Liverpool. So I will be in Liverpool from the 9th to the 12th of January. So I've arranged quite a few meetings with people that attended the event back in October. Just meeting them to follow up. A lot of people want to sit and, have me talk them through the APRA process. Again, some people want to just, come and talk about their options. Some people, I guess, are just nervous and have more questions that they want to ask me. And sometimes people would prefer to do that, on a one-on-one. So yeah, if anybody is in Liverpool and looking to meet up, I do still have some slots available from the 9th to the 12th. So they can feel free to reach out to me and I can get them booked in for a meeting.
And I guess, just to give a broader sort of idea of the situation at the moment, I mean, what is the main requirement for nurses to come to Australia?
So I guess the main thing is their APRA registration, which is the equivalent of the NMC in the UK and the NMBI in Ireland. You can't practice until you've got your APRA registration. And I guess the other main requirement then is the visa that you will be moving on. So that's where we would, our initial consultation with any nurse is to have a chat with them, find out what their plan is, if they even have a plan. Maybe map out a process for them, look at their timeframes. If it's a permanent residency visa they're looking at straight off, we will put them in touch with our partners at the Down Under Centre. It's everything is dictated by the visa, but APRA is something that everybody will have to do, is to apply for their APRA registration. And that's where we will, help out massively. I will handhold everybody through that process. I think I could do it in my sleep at this stage, but it's always changing as well. So the requirements are always changing, literally from month to month it changes, but we're always on top of it. So that's the main, I suppose, hurdle, if you want to look at it that way, that nurses have to overcome to get to Australia.
Yeah. There are a couple of questions that are coming in, and I hope you don't mind. This might be a good one for you. This is Haley. She's actually in Liverpool at the moment. So Haley, get in touch with Jane. She's going to be there in January. But she says, I'm a pediatric nurse currently working in Liverpool as a public health nurse in the community as part of school health. I'm looking to move with my partner and son. I mean, is that something you can move as a family?
Absolutely. So again, it would all come down to the visa that you're looking at. So what we would do is, if I was to meet with Hayley tomorrow, I would have a chat with her about, what her motivations are for moving to Australia. Does she have any locations in mind? Maybe do a brief overview of the visas and then pick the one that is best suited to her. And then, give her the tools that she needs to look into those visas a little bit more. The visas are quite complicated. There are so many of them. So we want to make sure that everybody is, educated as much as possible before they, take the jump. But yeah, absolutely. If Hayley wants to meet up when I'm in Liverpool, I'm available.
And we've got one more question there from Kamal, who asks, how does your sponsorship process work if I want to be sponsored by Alliance Nursing?
So to be sponsored by Alliance, you have to have at least 2 years experience in the UK or Ireland as a registered nurse. That goes for everybody looking to move over on the sponsorship visa. That's actually stipulated by the Australian government, not by us. So the first thing to do would be to get in touch with me, send me your CV, and then we would have a chat about what areas you're looking to move over to. I would speak to our teams in those areas to see if we have sponsorship opportunities available. Obviously, it can change from state to state. But at the moment, we are looking to sponsor nurses. Once you've got your 2 years full-time experience, we are looking to sponsor nurses.
Okay. Maybe I'll ask Joanne a couple of questions. Joanne, you're a recruitment consultant there in the UK. I mean, are you finding there's a lot of interest from nurses at the moment? And how long is it taking to get that through that registration process?
There's always a lot of interest in coming to Australia. I think for us, I did the process myself 15 years ago, and there's still even more interest now. The process, like Jane says, it all depends on your visa. Work and holiday visa is sort of no more than, I would say, 6 months and from start to when you could be in Australia. The sponsorship and PR, it all depends on the visa. Like Jane says, it's all very much visa dependent. But it is worth it. It is, and I think if you definitely want to do it, it is worth doing it. Without a doubt. I mean, the girls have all said there, and even back in the UK now, I still tell everybody it is worth every second. It's worth every hurdle, every email that you get back from APRA, every email you get from Kate or Aoife or Jane or anybody. It's worth it, because once you get off that plane and you're there, it is worth it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And how soon should you be reaching out to Alliance? Like if you say you're wanting to move in, a few months, 6 months, a year, I mean, when should you be having that conversation with Alliance?
As soon as you know that it's something you want to do, get in touch with Alliance, have a chat. It is, I know we keep repeating ourselves, but it is very much visa dependent. Work and holiday visa, you need a minimum of a year's experience. For everything else, it's 2 years experience. But as soon as you think, right, if you make the decision, this is what I want to do, get in touch with Alliance, and we will guide you in the sort of the time frame that you want. Like Jane says, with APRA, it changes on a daily basis what's happening. So it is all very much dependent on what you're doing. But if Australia is something you want to do, Alliance will help you 100%.
Yeah, and I hope that answers your question, Alyssa, there as well. I saw that you asked how long before wanting to move over do I need to engage with Alliance Nursing? As we just heard from Joanne, as soon as possible. So make sure you get in touch. And Hayley just said, thanks, Jane, for answering her question. She wants to know how to get in touch with you. She'd love to meet you in January. So is it your email or just getting in through the Alliance Nursing website? What's the best way to reach out to you for Hayley?
Yeah, email. I think after this, we'll probably be sending an email out to all the attendees. So I'll make sure that my details are on there. And then Hayley, you can just email me directly and we can pick a slot for us to meet.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's bring in Kate Gormley now. Kate is Alliance's National Manager of Corporate Health and International Supply Chain. Hey, Kate.
Hi, how you going, Kate?
Really, really well, thank you. Maybe talk us through what opportunities are there for nurses coming out to Australia in 2024?
Yeah, so I think some of the girls have referenced, you know, the opportunities, but as an agency, if you're looking for agency work, we've got sites all across Australia. So at the moment, we've got lots of opportunities in South Australia, Western Australia, Victoria, Brisbane. I think all of our branches are looking for nurses. I think agency work, flexibility is the key, and letting us help you when you first arrive. And like Amy said, having an open mind. But at the moment, there's lots of opportunities for both acute and aged care. There's a particular focus for aged care in South Australia and Brisbane. So if there's any aged care nurses out there looking for some placements, there's lots to pick from. We have some permanent positions. As Jane said, we're looking to get career permanent agency nurses to you know, support people working permanently but getting flexibility to work through the agency, and then some permanent opportunities as well. Similar to Amy's story is that if you come out and start as an agency nurse, we like to support you, you know, the 360 circle, we call it, where you might start with us to get your feet. I always say it's nice to start in the agency because you don't know where you want to live or where you want to be located, but if you do want a permanent position, we can then help you with our partner relationships that we've got with our clients. But I think the opportunities are endless at the moment. Again, we've got hospitals located all over New South Wales. So if you're coming to Sydney, you know, it's not just work on the eastern suburbs. We've got work all over Sydney, all over New South Wales. So if you're not a city person, you can work in, you know, coastal locations or regional locations. Similar to Brisbane with Brogan, like she said, if you want to base yourself somewhere where, you know, you're an hour and a half, you've got the luxury to work between the Gold Coast or even as far up as Townsville, Cairns, Hervey Bay. You know, I think Australia is so vast and big, and often people don't see, you know, all of the opportunities. So I think just having that discussion with us, we can help guide you on matching your clinical skills to where the best placement will be.
And I guess that's the great thing about Alliance as well, is that you do have offices all over the country. So if you want to move, I mean, or you want to travel, is that quite easy to do as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if any of you are following. Rachel is one of our nurses at the moment, and she's actually traveling around Australia for us. She loves to have that work-life balance. So she's absolutely one to follow because she's actually living and breathing it, and it's so easy to transfer between branches. We're on one system and a national platform. So it's literally pick up the phone and say, oh, I want to go to Brisbane, or I want to go to Townsville. And, you know, she's having the time of her life. I think she started in Albury and did some amazing sightseeing in between working shifts, from Albury up to Townsville, now into the Sunshine Coast. And she's already worked here in Sydney as well as Canberra as well. So yeah, definitely an opportunity for anyone thinking about traveling and working at the same time.
Yeah, actually, I've been following Rachel's adventures. She's, for anyone she's I think Lost and Found is in Sydney is her handle, but she does events in all over the place in Melbourne, Perth as well. And it's amazing to see, you know, she's got a drone and she's got beautiful drone footage. She's actually selling Australia, I think, to the rest of the world at the moment. It's amazing to see.
And getting paid to work whilst doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess that's the benefit, such a benefit as well. I mean, you can travel and then you're getting paid. So you're seeing so much of the country too. All right, Kate, thank you so much. Why don't we check in with Alliance Nursing's International Candidate Care Manager, Aoife Frawley. Hi, Aoife.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. It's that friendly voice on the phone that you'll probably hear first when you arrive here, in Australia. Aoife, tell us a bit about your role at Alliance Nursing.
Yes, so I mean, candidate care is just all about being there for you guys when you come over, you know, because as I think one of the girls said, it can be daunting when you're moving to a new country, but like Jane and the girls at home will sort you with everything before you come over. And then when you get here, I'll sort all like the small questions for you, you know, get you set up with like what you need to start working in a different country, like where you should live. And then once you're here for a few weeks or months, I'll keep checking in on you, keep making sure that you're in the work that you want. Like, is there a different area that you want to explore? Because with agency like that, like Amy said, yeah, you can start up, just have your mind open on all the different opportunities. You might get the work you want, but then think, oh, like, maybe I do want to go and see something, like explore another avenue of nursing while I'm here, because agency is a great way to do that. And then once you've been here for like 6 months, a year, I'll check in again and be like, hey, so what's your visa plans? Like, do you need any help with visas or have any questions or anything like that? So just, I'm here for all the questions, basically.
So one more question. When would you say is a good time to move out, or is any time a good time to move out?
I think there's no bad time to move to Australia. You know, I mean, there's good weather most of the time. I mean, it does get cold here sometimes, which people don't believe whatsoever. But mostly it's nice, you know, and work is always there. I would say the quietest time of the year, and like I don't know who said it earlier on, maybe it was Aveen, about the competitiveness. I think maybe the month that there is the most competitiveness is maybe January, because that's the month that everyone's like, right, we've had Christmas and New Year at home, let's move over in the new year. So that's just when a lot of people are moving. And just so, like, for everyone at home to know that it is the summer holidays over here. So during that time, that's when a lot of like private surgeons will take their summer holidays and go traveling themselves, which means that in a lot of the private hospitals that we have, you know, the elective surgeries tend to slow down. So that just means that like January can be a little bit quieter. So what I recommend is, because you've got most of the people are coming over on a working holiday visa, do your traveling. Get on the ground and go and do your travels. It's a great time because the sun's beaming, like it's perfect weather to go traveling anywhere in Australia. And that just means that you get all your traveling in before you can come back and get settled into work.
Well, this next question probably leads into that. I mean, how much money do you need to have or how much savings do you need to have to move to Australia?
I mean, how long is a piece of string? But like, it is quite hard to say like how much you should have before you come over. But what I would kind of recommend is around $5,000, like definitely as a minimum to have that. A lot of people when they come over will get, you know, a lot of people get house shares if they're coming just with themselves, or like if they're solo travelers or with their partners. But if a few of you come over together, it means you're getting a lease on a house. And to secure that, you need a bond, which is like 4 weeks rent up front. So like, and I mean, it is more expensive over here when you think about it for renting that. But when you start working, it does all even out, you know. But it can be quite a shot into your savings when you first get here. And what I also say to people is always have the money for a flight home. Don't let your savings dip that much that you just always have the money there for a flight home. If anything happens, or if you're like, oh, I want to take a holiday, or oh, I wasn't going to go home for that birthday or that party, but I'm going to go home anyway. It's just nice to know you have the money there yourself.
Yeah, a little bit of a safety net.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What about finding somewhere to live? I mean, what's the best way to go about, you know, I guess working out not just where to live, but, you know, what sort of accommodation is available and, you know.
Yeah. So that'll all depend on what city you're going to, really, you know. I mean, when you first come over here, I will know exactly what your speciality in nursing is and what city you're moving to. So I've put together a little, like basically an overview of all the good suburbs that I think are really good for people to live in, especially when they first get here. That like, do you have people from home living in those suburbs? I'm not going to send you like out to Puckup out in the sticks, you know, like I want you to also have a good work-life balance, that you see like a lot of people traveling in those suburbs as well. So I put that together, and then from there you can go and explore those areas, see those different suburbs, and then start looking for houses or apartments. So if you're looking for just a room share, I would say go on like flatmates.com, flatmate finder, and then there's a lot of Facebook pages. So there's a lot, like, you know, Melbourne around, or Irish around Melbourne, or, you know, Irish around Brisbane, or Palms in Sydney. Like, there's a lot of different Facebook pages, but just make sure that when you're speaking to the people, you just don't give any money over until you've been to see the house and you know they're legit, because it is social media. So just to have your wits about you when you're doing that. And then if you're coming over and if you want to get your own apartment and your own lease, I would say the recommended two are Domain and Real Estate are really good to look on. And look, a lot of people will go and see loads of different houses when they come over, but I'm a true believer of what's for you won't pass you, and you will find the place that's for you eventually.
And we did hear a little bit about, you know, we touched on public transport, whether you need a car or not. I guess does it depend where you live? Like, do you need a car?
Yeah, I would say it depends on the state you live in, really, you know. Like, there is like the bigger cities like Sydney and Melbourne that it's probably fine not to have a car. But just being open to making sure that like not all your ships are going to be in your backyard, you know. I mean, especially in Sydney, I think people come over and they want to live in Bondi and Coogee, and they're like, oh, we're not going to actually go like like 20 minutes outside here for shifts. And I'm like, well, there's only about 4 hospitals in that area with so many nurses. That's too competitive. So just like Amy said, again, just have your mind open, be willing to travel. Because the more you get to know our team and the more our team are like, oh, like that nurse is really reliable and she'll pick up shifts, we'll start like making sure that you get the shifts that you want then. So I would say be open. If you're not getting a car, be open to like an hour on public transport. But if you're moving to areas like Perth or like South Australia, I would say a car is probably a better option. Just gives you more options, like Brogan in the Brisbane. But to get up to like the Gold Coast or the Sunshine Coast, it's probably better to have a car so you have like more opportunities for work.
The next question is a very important question. When do you get paid?
When do you get paid? Every week. Yeah, so we get paid, the nurses get paid every week on a Wednesday.
And maybe just explain superannuation, because I understand that's a little bit, I know putting you on the spot there. I know that it's kind of, that's a little bit different to what perhaps nurses might be used to.
Yes, absolutely. And look, there's probably Australians on here that are like, how is she going to explain this? But the best way I can think to explain it when you're coming over is it's just like a savings, like a pension account. Like it is like a pensions account because you don't actually get it back until your pension age. But a lot of nurses, when they come over, are like, oh, I don't need to get a superannuation account. Like, I don't want it. We're like, oh my God, get it. Like, it's a great way to save. So for all the world, I'll keep it easy because I'm not the best with maths. So if you're paid like $100 by us, so obviously you'll get paid your $100, but it'll be taxed. We'll say all the different visas that you'll be on are taxed in different ways. But for example, a working holiday visa, you should only be taxed like 15%. So you get taxed your 15%, and then you'll get the rest of that into your bank account. But on top of that, into your superannuation account, at the moment, your employer will pay 11% of that wage into that separate account. So you'll see all that money going in every week from us. And then you have 2 choices then. It's either when you hit the pension age that you can start withdrawing that every week, or if you move home early and you're like, oh, like I'm only going to do my 2 years in Australia or 5 years or whatever, and you don't become a permanent resident, you can claim that money back. So you just have to apply to your super account to claim the money back. But I believe you do have to declare that you won't be working in Australia ever again. So that's just a choice that you have to make yourself. And then I think you get back 33% of the lump sum that's in there.
Yeah. And what about if you want to travel? We sort of have touched on this. But if you want to travel as well, can you sort of plan your time around Australia? Can you work and travel at the same time?
Absolutely. Like I mean, a lot of working holiday visas come over for all the world if you're on a working holiday visa. And they're like, oh, like we want to do a working holiday visa. But then they get so bogged down with work, they kind of forget that they need to travel. So I really encourage people to travel. Because it's agency work. We have companies everywhere that are screaming out for nurses, so we would love for you to travel. Just give us maybe like 2 or 3 weeks notice when you're moving to a new place, and we'll just give you an update. So like in different states, there might be different requirements. Like you might have to get an extra vaccination if you're working in Perth, or if you move to a new state, you might need a different working with children check. But we'll tell you that the 2 or 3 weeks in advance, so that when you get there, it might only be like 4 or 5 days for that check to come back, and then you hit the ground running and you can start working that new state.
And what about your best piece of advice for nurses wanting to move out? What's that one little nugget that you give to all nurses that are arriving?
Oh God, there's so much. And just when I'm listening to like all the girls coming over, I'm like, I wish I could tell you like everything that I could. I don't know, like having your year's experience is really important. I know people sometimes go over there like they've only got their 6 months work ahead of them, and like their 6 months work done, sorry. And they're like, oh, we'll just move over. But it can be quite hard to place you in a nursing role if you don't have that 1 year's experience. Because otherwise you have to be really open to like every opportunity and do absolutely anything to gain that year's experience. Amy would know all about that, because I think, Amy, I think you came over as an RN1. So like that's how she started off in aged care, wasn't it?
Yeah, I came over January 2018 and I moved in February 2018, which highly advised me not to, but I did it anyway.
Did it anyway, yeah. But look, it worked out. But I would say Like, that's the best piece of advice I'd give. Get on to us as early as possible so we can plan your journey and have that year's experience, and you will fly it over here.
All right. Thank you so much, Aoife. Now, I know it is getting a little bit late there, but this is your last chance to get any questions in. So pop them in that Q&A box or in the chat box for us. We do have one question. This might be a good one for you, Jane, from Kamal again. I'm a 24-year-old ICU nurse with Italian citizenship living in the UK. Do I still need to complete my English test even after finishing my 3 years of college and university degree in the UK to get the APRA or for my APRA application?
Most likely, Kamal, yes, you will have to. Unless English is your primary language, then, and if you haven't been educated for 5 years or more through English, then you probably will have to do the IELTS exam. Ultimately, it's APRA will make that decision. So when you submit your portfolio to them, they will come back and let you know if that is a requirement. But based on what you have said, I would say yes, you will have to do the English language exam.
Yeah, is that for all nurses or everyone?
No,
moving over?
if you're educated through English from, primary school upwards, then no, you won't have to do the English language test. But a lot of nurses that work in Ireland and the UK may have gone to primary, secondary school in different countries. And then for them to move over, they will have to do the English language test.
All right, Kamal, hopefully that has answered your question for you guys. I think that's the last of the questions that we sort of went through as we went. But yeah, I want to say a big thank you to our nurses, Evine, Amy and Brogan, for joining us today. It's been so lovely to hear all about your experience of Australia. And Amy, we're so excited we're going to have you back here very soon. Also, thank you guys, everyone watching on, for jumping on and sharing some time with us this evening. As we heard, even if the idea of moving to Australia is just a thought at the back of your mind at the moment, speak to the team at Alliance Nursing now, as it can take some time to get the ball rolling. And as Jane mentioned, she is in Liverpool on the 9th, 10th and 11th of January. So definitely reach out to her if you want to make an appointment. And of course, you can get in touch with the team by visiting alliancenursing.com.au. Whether it's a holiday, a working holiday, we'd love to see you here in Australia very, very soon. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.